Prophet Yahya Alaihissalam. The name Yahya is a special name given directly by God. It is said to be a special name from God because previously there were not many names Yahya. The news about the birth of Prophet Yahya is stated in the Quran Surah Maryam verse 7. He is a descendant of a well-known prophet named Zakaria. The story of the Prophet Yahya in childhood was filled with learning and learning activities. What is done is something useful and not in vain. He was very diligent and active in studying religious knowledge. Moreover, because he was so persistent, when his childhood friend asked him to play, he emphatically replied that humans were not created in this world to play. Prophet Yahya grew and developed under different conditions from his peers. When friends his age were busy torturing animals when they were playing, little Yahya preferred to give food to the animals in front of him. This is what makes many animals respect and also submit to the Prophet Yahya. Because of the habits that were carried out since childhood, the Prophet Yahya eventually grew into a child with noble character. He is also very intelligent and affectionate. People know Prophet Yahya as a person who was very affectionate and devoted to his beloved parents. This continues to be done until he grows up and becomes a role model for all people. The story of the Prophet Yahya and the Prophet Zakaria in the Quran. Talking about the story of Prophet Yahya cannot be separated from the story of his father, namely Prophet Zakaria. Prophet Zakaria was the biological father of Prophet Yahya, who was also given the task of preaching amidst the children of Israel who opposed him. At one point, Prophet Zakaria was contemplating that he was old and worried about who would be his successor. Prophet Zakaria was a prophet who until old age did not have children. While all of his brothers and relatives were people of the children of Israel who strongly opposed him. They have the habit of immorality and violate God's laws. He was worried that if he died later no one would continue to lead the people according to the true teachings. He also felt very sad at the age of his marriage, which had reached 90 years and had not been given children. Mourning this, he prayed to God with a real prayer. Then he believed that nothing would be impossible if God had willed it. He also kept begging to be given a son who was able to inherit him and guide the children of Israel. Then, Allah gave a revelation to the Prophet Zakaria, and it is stated in the Quran that Allah will give a pious son. The son was named Yahya. He will also be a persistent leader from Satan's temptations. Prophet Zakaria also felt that this was impossible because his wife was infertile and Zakaria was old. But apparently God showed his power by giving the Prophet Yahya as his son. And finally, he became the successor to the struggle of Prophet Zakaria, who always received guidance and protection from Allah SWT. Prophet Yahya's food and his proximity to animals. The story of Prophet Yahya is full of meaning. Once upon a time, the Prophet Yahya was alone and praying in a desert. He did this because of his very high love for Allah SWT. When he prayed, he was unable to stem his tears. This prompted the animals to freeze for a while. In fact, they usually howl and roar at each other. However, suddenly silence when he heard the Prophet Yahya. It turned out that the animals there knew that it was the Prophet Yahya who was praying in the desert. The beast intends to respect and chooses to stay away. The aim was that the Prophet Yahya would not be disturbed when he was praying. This was later crowned as one of the miracles owned by the Prophet Yahya. One of the types of food eaten by the Prophet Yahya was grasshoppers. Then he drank the water by taking it directly from the river. From here, the Prophet Yahya realized that humans are God's creatures who receive the most favors. He then reflected that true wealth is the wealth of the heart by sincerely accepting gifts from God. Regarding the food of the Prophet Yahya, once there was a history conveyed by Abu Idris al-Khawlani that the Prophet Yahya was a human being whose food was the best. Where he often eats leaves together with land animals, not only with tame animals, but also with wild animals. That he did in order to maintain the destruction of human life itself. The story of the Prophet Yahya when dialogue with the devil. Next is the story of the Prophet Yahya when he had a dialogue with the cursed devil. Once upon a time, there was a demon who came to the Prophet Yahya. The arrival of the devil intends to give advice to the Prophet Yahya. However, Prophet Yahya was reluctant to accept the advice given by the devil because he knew that the devil must be lying. Prophet Yahya said in the story of Prophet Yahya, which is explained in the Quran, that he did not want to take advice from the devil. However, he instead asked the devil to tell him about Prophet Adam's children and grandchildren. Then the devil explained that Adam's children and grandchildren are divided into three major groups. The first is the group that is the most violent in opposing the devil. As for the characteristics of this hard class, they will not be able to be tempted by the devil. Therefore, the demon group will gain nothing. As for the class of the second generation of Adam's descendants, it is the group that is controlled by the devil. This faction is very easy to influence whenever they are. Thus, the devil will be happy with those who submit. In addition, there is another group that when Satan says that this third group is like Prophet Adam, where God protects him so that even the devil will never manage to penetrate them. Hearing this, the Prophet Yahya asked the devil if he could tempt him. Hearing this question, the devil replied that he would not be able to tempt the Prophet Yahya, except when the Prophet Yahya ate too much and was so full that he fell asleep very soundly. Because by doing so, the Prophet Yahya would not be able to worship and pray at night as he usually did in his daily life. Satan felt that he could not tempt Prophet Yahya at that time. Then the devil left and hoped that on another occasion he would succeed in tempting him. And on another day, the devil returned to the Prophet Yahya with the desire to tempt him. He came while showing the items in the hanger. Prophet Yahya was surprised and asked what item was being hung by the devil. Then the devil replied that it was the lust of the son of Adam. Then the Prophet Yahya asked whether he also had such lust. The devil answered correctly, but only occasionally when you eat too much and make you forget to do sunnah worship. The Prophet Yahya then returned to ask what other lusts were. Then the devil answered no, because the Prophet Yahya was truly someone who was guarded by God. Finally, Prophet Yahya replied that Allah would never fill Prophet Yahya's stomach with various foods in it. Satan also acknowledged and realized this, and he insisted not to give advice to the children of Adam.